Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live or listening to replay. Always appreciate everyone for tuning in live or listening to replay. This is going to be the vault episode 234, estate planning, will versus trust. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live. Once again, the replay, feel free to always reach out, Christian at trustchristian.com. For consultations or moving forward in that capacity. Once again, it's Christian at trustchristian.com. Just want to thank you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. So it's always very appreciated. This is for trustees, future trustees that go through the trustee training program. We get a lot of people that reach out to the vault on a weekly, daily, and monthly basis, yearly basis, and we just want to always make it a point to do episodes for trustees that have gone through the program to still tune in live. And this is a topic that comes up, this question actually, when we talk about estate planning and we talk about whether it's a will to go with or a trust. And so, as you are a trustee of the estate and moving in that capacity, it's rather important to know your position. And this goes to, people that are part of communities that talk about estate and, you got to be the executor of your estate and all this good stuff. But you know, we know what position we are in as trustees. We're not confused about our position as trustees. And this is something that can really be a detriment if you are not versed in estate planning, if you are not educating yourself in estate planning, because the first thing when you look at it is an estate. That means you have something to pass along. And the second one is estate planning. A lot of people don't feel that they need a plan. And this is going to be a hiccup for anyone that is not in the mode of planning, does not plan in general. Estate planning can be uh, very ambiguous because it's something that does not give a definitive plan. And so we're going to address a lot of the issues that, when you go to a traditional estate planner, what the conversation is going to be like, the questions that you're going to hear, the comments that you're going to hear, the assessment that you should be getting. So we're going to go through a lot of that. And we just appreciate once again everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Shout out to the Bronx. Thank you for listening in the Bronx, New York. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening from. But one of the things that we see is a drop ball from the estate planners and from you, if you're going to be going to an estate planner, is walking into an estate planner and not having a proper financial assessment. A lot of people go and try to talk to these lawyers, they try to talk to these accountants, they talk to these estate planners, and they really have not had their portfolio assessed. So what happens is their portfolio and their estate is being misdiagnosed from just clear ignorance coming from a controlled knowledge situation. Somebody is just arbitrarily giving you information, and these people have to be held accountable. These estate planners have to be held accountable. The lawyers have to be held accountable. The accountants have to be held accountable. That's why the vault doesn't need to give legal advice. Why? Because they have lawyers that are to give legal advice. But how can they give you proper legal advice if you are not giving them full disclosure on the portfolio or the estate itself? And so this is a drop ball in the estate planning community, because we get people coming to the vault all the time saying, well, the estate planner said we need a will. The estate planner said we should get this type of trust. The estate planner said we should get a will even though we're in trust. These are things that are called being misdiagnosed inside of the estate. And so, we're here to address that. So appreciate Alaska for tuning in live. Appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live. Cali for tuning in live. We got a lot of people that are listening live right away, and appreciate that. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening from. And so when we get down to it, we really have to address the diagnosis of the portfolio first. If these people are not giving you an assessment or assessing the portfolio as a whole, that's a drop ball. How can they fully assess, what to diagnose? It's like a doctor. These people are to be diagnosing and administering. That's why they call it practicing law, because they're practicing, medicine. They're practicing on your family estate, the livelihood, the health of your estate. What are assets that are generating cash flow? What are liabilities that are taking cash flow out of the family portfolio and things of that nature? And those things have to be properly assessed. But if you don't have a plan, even when you go to the financial planner or go to the estate planner, it is going to be a challenging time for you. So this is where you and your family have to sit down at the table and say, what are our financial needs now? And what are our financial needs going to be in the future? This is where, you all hear the common misnomer that, oh, just save up $1 million in your life and you're going to be able to live off the interest, once you turn 65 or 70. And that's just a load of crock, ladies and gentlemen. You all know that $1 million today is not the same as $1 million was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And the $1 million is not going to be the same in the future. So how can you just say we're going to save for an arbitrary number? And this is where you see a lot of the new age financial advisors saying focus on cash flow, because cash flow is consistent to the marketplace. It's consistent to the rate of to people, to living standards. If rent goes up for people that you're renting out properties to, it's going to be, dealing with the rate of that community. So the cash flow is going to stay consistent. And this is where you see the drop ball, because people are not factoring in inflation. They're not factoring in these things. And that's why having a plan is so important. And if you all listen to the vault, and you pretty much are a planner if you're listening to the vault. And if you're a first time listener or you haven't listened a lot, having a financial plan personally comes from yourself. It does not come from a financial advisor. It does not come from a financial planner. Someone cannot tell you, oh, well, if you just save up this amount of money, you should be good by 65. Ladies and gentlemen, the insurance companies have actuaries. These people have people that are doing mathematical calculations based off of your health, based off of market conditions. There are things that are going on that can and cannot be calculated, ladies and gentlemen. So it's up to you to plan for it, not to depend on some other man or woman just because they have a degree, just because they have some education, to actually plan out your financial future. That is a drop ball in the environment in and of itself. Is people are saying, well, I got to go to this financial planner. I got to go to this estate planner, and they're going to lay out for me my financial plan or my estate plan for the next, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 years for my grandchildren's children. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a plan. So the first thing in estate planning is literally having a plan for yourself, for your family. And if you don't have a plan, how can you expect the counsel? Because that's what they are. They're counsel. They're a third party opinion. They're not in your family situation. They actually don't have any vested interest in your financial situation. That should be a red flag in and of itself. When someone does not have a vested interest in your financial plan, that is huge. How can you expect someone to give you quality determining advice, and they literally don't have a vested interest in your financial future? That is a red flag. But when you're in an environment that, because people are living off of titles, oh, I'm a CFP, I'm a CHFP, and all these other different titles, ladies and gentlemen, are all colleges created equal? No. So how is it that one financial planner's advice is going to be the same as every other financial advisor's information? They're not. The education is not going to be the same. This is where we get into controlled and uncontrolled knowledge. That's the difference. So this is where we get trustees reach out and they talk about trust. This is where we get a lot of people coming in. Oh, I got my trust set up. So you have the trust set up, ladies and gentlemen. Are you are you in revocable? Are you in irrevocable? Are you in living? Are you in public? Are you in private? These are things you have to know if you're saying that this is your trust. This is why we take the approach we take with the vault, because it's trustee training. This is why we talk the way we talk, because so many people come to the vault and say, well, somebody else set my trust up. Right. But at the same time, you haven't been trained in trusteeship if you're a trustee. That's why we've taken the approach of trustee training, because that's what it's about. It's about being able to administer or find other people to properly administer the estate. And a lot of times, a lot of people have not been trained in that. Where are you going to learn estate training? Where are you going to learn trustee training? That is a question. And that's why the vault provides that. It's because we saw the drop ball. It doesn't take away the estate planner. You still can go to estate planners and look at wealth building tools. They have access to wealth building tools. They have access to institutional tools. But That doesn't mean that you don't use them for counsel. It's just you have to be trained in estate planning. So it's a drop ball in public school. Public school does not teach you how to pass along wealth from one generation to the next properly. And this is very important. So we're going to talk about some examples today, such as Aretha Franklin. You all can go look up Aretha Franklin and her estate and how it was administered. This is someone that was a American singer, very successful American singer, generated tons of wealth. I mean, she had records. She still has records that are being played. She's getting a royal. That family estate is getting royalties. But when you don't have your family estate in the proper position and you wrote down your family estate on a napkin, this is where my family estate is how to be administered through a will. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see the drop ball in the lack of estate planning. This is someone that had the capital. She had the capital while she was living. But what happens when you don't have it in the correct position? You see that there's a drop ball from one generation to the next. We'll give an example of success story. Success story looks like Steve Jobs, where when you can Google and see that his wife and his children all received money in different trusts, not through a will, through a trust. You can see, okay, you can see why wealthy people say, I'm not going to give money directly to my children. So when people come to the vote and they say, well, I'm in trust, I'm trying to pass along assets to my children properly. How are you trying to pass those assets along? Are you trying to pass those assets along in a trust? Or are you trying to pass those assets along in a will? Because those are two separate things. And a lot of times when you're talking to an estate planner, traditionally even just a lawyer, a CFP, or whatever these guys want to call themselves, they talk to you from an ignorant standpoint. That means that you don't know what they're talking about. And so it's incumbent upon you to understand the difference between a will and a trust. Why would you need a will if you have a trust in place? The trust is to administer the asset allocation process. But oh no, no. You get these guys, they still trying to put you inside of a will. Why? Because they know that you don't know what you're doing in the first place. That's why you're coming to them. But if you came to them from a position of education, which trustee training puts you in, then you're coming from a position of, okay, if we're going to deal in trust, specifically if the lawyer or the estate planner is going to put you in whatever type of trust it is, then they make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a counter or a compromising position. This is what we talk about in trustee training. We talk about the proper positions, whereas so many people come into a position of ignorance and say, well, I don't know the difference between a will and what type of trust I'm supposed to be utilizing. And then there's over 80 different types of trust. So which one am I supposed to be in? Well, let's just go ahead and get rid of a lot of the ignorance behind it. First of all, a will has to have a lawyer to administer your family estate. Bottom line, it goes to a thing called probate. So let's just say you work your whole life and you don't have a will. You go into a thing called intestate. That means you die without a will. You die without, some type of administration. That's what the estate is set up for. The administration of the estate. The administration is set up whether it's through a will, a written document. It has to be documented. Think about how many family members, how many people you know that literally have been passed along assets that have not been passed along through the proper administrative tools. These are administrative tools. And if you're not in the driver's seat, which is traditionally the trustee on trust, how will you know how to administer assets to the next generation? You have to know these things. And so let's just talk about the will being a tool to pass along wealth from one generation to the next. Well, when you go through probate, the lawyer has probate fees. That means because you didn't have someone in place, not just a lawyer, because you didn't have someone in place internally in your family, you had an arbitrary third party person, because that's what they're supposed to be, impartial and arbitrary. They're supposed to stick to the document. They take a fee. Well, do you know what those fees are for your state? That's important. Those state fees are not the same. All lawyers are not barred to go in one state to the next state. So it's important for us to know how much the fees are going to be from one state to the next state based off the lawyer administering the estate. Bottom line, every state's not the same. So when you find out that these lawyers are going to take 17 to 34%, then you see, wow, they're going to take how much? Let's repeat that again. It's like taxes almost. These guys are getting paid almost a tax for something, for your lack of diligence and your lack of estate planning in and of itself. They're going to take they're going to take 17%. Oh, somebody says, "Well, what if they take 7%?" Ladies and gentlemen, what wealth did they build for you? Nothing. So why would you be okay with them taking 7 or 8%? But oh no, no. Somebody says, well, that sounds legit. Why? Because you're ignorant. You think that sounds like a tax. Not only are they going to administer their own tax on you, they're going to allow it to go do probate tax. Did you not know that there was a probate tax? There is a term called probate tax. And when you pass along the wealth to your children, there's an inheritance tax. And when you pass along the wealth to your children, there's an estate tax. These are real legitimate taxes, ladies and gentlemen. So wow, now we can see why you would lose 30 to 40 to 50% of your wealth just by going through a will. It's that simple. So then we get over into the trust realm, where a lot of people are looking to administer estate through trust. But you get these lawyers and these accountants, you get these estate planners that tell you, well, you still should have a will in place. Oh, really? So you just heard what the will does as far as taxes, whether you were unbeknownst or knowing. Now you know. You can do the research in your area to find out in your particular state how that looks. But then you get into the trust realm and they're still talking to you about wills. Hold on. But they're not the same thing. No, they're not. And that's where you get into understanding trusteeship. You understand that you have to be in a position of control, not ownership. So many people are afraid to divest themselves of assets. But what happens when you pass along wealth from one generation to the next? You just saw in the wills case that there's taxes. You all can go look up very successful people. We just actually saw a story come through our feed within the past month about James Brown. James Brown was a very successful entrepreneur, singer, once again, in the United States. Literally, his estate was in probate for 17 years, ladies and gentlemen. How is the estate in probate for 17 years? They didn't even get all of the estate figured out in 1 year. So now you got a tax that's going on for 17 years. You all can Google these stories, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Google environment now. And so why are we talking about something such as a will when someone's estate can be, your children may be denied assets and access to assets for 17 years for lack of estate planning, proper estate planning. Think about this. Think about how you know you don't have an estate plan in place. If you go tomorrow, literally, if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you go tomorrow, will you go intestate? Will you go in probate? Or will you go in trust? That's it. How many families will pass along assets? May not even pass along the asset because it's too expensive to pass along the asset. Sometimes the children don't even want the asset because they're literally are being passed a liability. Some people contact the vault and they say, well, what about an insurance policy? Should I give it to my children directly? There's no taxes involved with that. But what happens when you have documents such as a trust in place that says when you receive this money as a trustee, it's different than when you receive it as a beneficiary? Did you know that? There's a difference. So what position are you going to leave your children the wealth in? Are you going to leave them in a position of fiduciaryship to grow the asset? Or are you leaving them in a position of beneficiary where they're going to sit on it, they're going to take it, they're going to siphon it out, and they're going to lose it all? Because that's what they do. Go read the statistics on children that are passed along assets from the beneficiary position as opposed to their children being groomed into trusteeship. That's why we have trustee training. It's because once you get into trusteeship, you have to be able to train successor trustees. Well, who are you going to let to be your successor trustee? The bank? Who's going to be your successor trustee? A lawyer that you're not familiar with? Or are you going to put your children in trusteeship where they have to grow the assets, where they have a mandate to grow the assets? Or are you putting them in a position where they're going to receive assets? Oh, well, I'm not going to give the money directly to my children. We hear a lot of people say that from the vault. I'm not going to give it directly to my children. I'm going to give it to my grandchildren. So are your grandchildren being trained to be successor trustees, or are they trained to be beneficiaries. Which one is it, ladies and gentlemen? That's why the vault provides trustee training. It's because we see this problem in the marketplace. And if you haven't made more money than James Brown or Aretha Franklin, which they made multi-million-dollar deals. Ladies and gentlemen, what about Michael Jackson that made $1 billion last year? His estate made billions of dollars. Are his children administering the estate from a trustee position? Or administering the estate? Or they're just in a position of receivership? Beneficiary. Which one are your children going to be in? Where they can't touch the funds and grow the funds, you literally put them in a position where they have no control. You put them in a position of being a liability to the trust. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. That's why trustee training was created. It's to put people in a position where they can have a system to train their children or their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren like the Rothschilds. People want to condemn the Rothschilds. How can you condemn the Rothschilds for having a system in place to grow and pass along wealth from one generation to the next? They have a system. Just like you went to public school system, they had a private trustee training system that if you wanted any money, you will be trained in how to protect, preserve, grow, and pass on his wealth to another Rothschild. To this last name that has prestige. It has a system in place. Does your family have a system in place now? See, the will didn't have a system in place. The system over in the will was, hey, we're going to get some lawyer to take us through probate. And testate, you didn't even have anything in place. The family didn't have anything in place. But oh, no. Yes. People want to get into trusteeship. They want to go still to the lawyer and say, hey, put me in this type of trust. But how many people contact the vault every single week and say, well, I don't even know who created the trust. Hold on. You got a lawyer to create it, but you don't know who's the grantor. You don't even know the names of the positions. Well, it's the trust. It's first is the grantor, then it's the trustor. No, the trustor is the grantor. Did you not research that? This is what we're encouraging you to do, is to do your research before you start going and seeking outside counsel that is literally based off of their education level. A degree from Harvard is not the same from Temple or FAMU. They're not the same. So by that being the case, we have to do our research for our families, like the Rothschilds did, like the Rockefellers did. The Rockefellers didn't even, the gentleman that started the Rockefeller estate doesn't even have a high school education. So for all you all that have high school educations and have degrees, how much further are you along than someone that doesn't? See, this isn't based off of controlled knowledge through a degree, because they're not all created equal. This is based off of self-knowledge. See, Ford, the Ford that you all drive around in, he didn't have a high school diploma either. So you think you got off the hook because Rockefeller's different? No, Ford didn't have a degree either. But for some odd reason, he was able to protect, preserve, and grow well and pass along for generations now. We sat around families like the DuPonts at the vault, that they literally would tell you they have mandates in their family, that if you don't, their children don't just get to receive money. They don't get money as a trustee. They have a mandate. You go to school. You do certain things. You get a specific education for the family. This isn't, oh man, I just want to go out and learn. I want to learn the creative art. I just want to be an artist. Yeah, but what happened if family needed you? Who do you think is going to pay for that education? The family. So the family needs you to do something. It's a reciprocal relationship. That's the difference. The family has a calling for you. You just didn't come here to be selfish. But how many people did? They came here to be selfish. I'm not going to do what my family told me to do. I don't want to be the family lawyer. I don't want to be the family accountant. I don't want to be the family doctor. No, you're willing to drain the family funds and spend all the money on outside lawyers. You're willing to drain the family funds on outside accounts. You're willing to drain the family funds on outside doctors and etc. Because there's a lack of estate planning for the family. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, their families are groomed in this information. That's why we have trustee training. We were sitting in a meeting with our mentors when we first started in trusteeship. When we sat in our trusteeship meetings, our mentors said, look, there's two reasons why Wealth is not passed along from one generation to the next. It's A, because you don't have a manual. That's what the vault provides. The vault provides that manual. You gotta have the manual. You gotta have it. Otherwise, you already are trained through mentorship in your family. It's that simple. It's only two ways. Why? Because trusteeship is private. You don't share everything that your family estate has with some lawyer or with some accountant that's outside. But people think that's the way it's supposed to be done. Are you really disclosing as the trustee or the leader of your family all the assets to outside parties? You think you're sharing all that information with the insurance agent? No. Most people don't want to share all that information. And that's true. You shouldn't. You're burying it in different holes. But do you have good management systems in place? That's what the vault provides, is a management system. You have to learn proper management. Trusteeship. Well, let's go into what trusteeship is. Is trusteeship employeeship? How are you going to be in trust and you're still thinking like an employee? Because you don't have a manual? Because your family's not training you? Because there's no system in place from the family? The mentors? That's what the vault provides. It provides the mentorship and that manual. That's the difference. You got to have it written down, ladies and gentlemen. The family plan for the next few generations. Most wealth is squandered by the second generation because, hey, we're in a tech era now. So you see a lot of the families that were in a lot of machines, a lot of fossil fuels, they've moved on to, oh, we're going to get into these tech companies and things of that nature. Well, how is capital to be allocated to those children to go out and grow the assets of the family estate? There has to be some type of document in place that says we are going to make appropriations for failure. That means you can have money to go out and grow the estate, but you have a limit on it. You're not going to just take all the funds and go out and squander them on your tchotchke ideas, but we will give you capital for your ideas. That's estate planning, ladies and gentlemen. Guess what? Most estate planners don't tell people that because we don't hear most estate planners tell people that. All they tell them is, guess what? You just need to have it inside of a will. You need to have it in a document. Well, who's writing the document? The lawyer? Who's writing the document? You as the trustee for your successors? Because that's what trustee training does. It trains the successor trustees through your written documents, telling you that it's in the minutes. Everybody says, oh, I got to trust. I got to trust. But what happened to your minutes? Do you have the minutes? Wow, how many minutes do I need to have? As many as you can write. You got to write the manual. But you got to trust. You listen to the vault. You got all the game you needed. I got my trust set up, But do you have a template for minutes? We recommend you all go to the vault. We do recommend you all go to the vault. But the vault has a library. We all recommend that you all go to the law library. The law library has templates for minutes. In trustee training, we recommend specific books. See, you can't get all the information from everywhere, right? Because not all lawyers are created equal. Not all estate planners are created. So there's specific places in the private sector that you have to go to. That's why it's private. Because it's not for everybody. But a lot of people do want to administer their estate from the proper position. And the way you do that is by getting continuing education as a trustee. How many of you all are investing in going to American Banker Associated meetings? None of these guys over the internet that want to talk about stuff, they're not doing that. Why? Because when you go through a system, you get trained in the fact that you practice private family banking as a trustee. You administer private family banking as a trustee. The ABA is not the only place you go and build relationships. You do go connect with lawyers. You do go connect with the real estate investor associations if you're in real estate. You do connect with business litigation lawyers. The family estate is going to have businesses in it, so why not have the relationships with business litigation lawyers? They're not the same as a probate lawyer. They're two different people. This is what estate planning is. This is the difference between going to a traditional estate planner and going to the vault as a trustee in training. You learn how to take responsibility. And you cannot come to trustee training with an employee mindset. Well, I'm just going to get in trust because I just want to protect my car. Really? Go get the public trust. Go to your bank. Banks provide documents for trust. If not, go to a public lawyer. They provide it to protect your car. See, when you're truly in trusteeship, like the vault for trustee training, you're focused on building wealth. Not just protecting a car. Not just protecting a house or two that someone gave you from the previous generation in the wrong position. You actually are there to grow wealth. You got to make those hard and tough decisions at times as a trustee. My family gave me a piece of property, but I don't know what to do with it. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you all are sitting on assets, specifically real estate? That means you're sitting on equity. But when you don't have a trustee mindset, you do just that. You sit on it. You don't get it appraised. You don't go to the bank and say, hey, you know what? This is an asset, right? Yeah, because it's equity. Trust is in equity. Most people know that. Well, what can I do with this equity? That's like sitting on a daggone diamond, sitting on acres of diamonds. You all should read that book, Acres of Diamonds, because it's going to teach you that you're sitting on diamonds, not just gold. You're sitting on diamonds, things that took years of someone else's hard work and labor. Maybe they passed it wrong. Maybe they passed it along in the wrong position. But what are you going to do about it now? Are you going to keep sitting on it in the wrong position? Well, my employee mindset says I got to wait 2 weeks for a paycheck. The asset is already valued. You don't need to wait 2 weeks for the paycheck. The asset is already valued. Well, it's going to cost me to get an appraisal. Right. And then what do I do from there? See, it's an education mindset. You have to educate yourself on what you're going to do with the asset. What is your plan for the asset? What if you found out you were sitting on a $100,000 property, but right now the house isn't even worth 50? You wouldn't even know that because you didn't get the appraisal, because you didn't want to spend $500. You didn't want to spend $2,000. You didn't want to spend $3,000. You wanted to be what's called an employee. You wanted someone to give you that information. In trusteeship, it doesn't work that way. You got to get out your comfort zone. You got to go meet lawyers. You got to be willing to interview a lawyer and tell a lawyer you don't know what the hell you're talking about. How many trustees have come to trustee training and literally come back and say, well, my accountant told me I can't change my S Corp back to a C Corp in the entire year? Ladies and gentlemen, why would they not do it when you told them to do it? Because guess what? You were thinking like an employee. So when they tell you that they can't, they're really telling you they don't want to. And that's when you tell them you're fired. Because you need something done right now. That's like somebody coming to the accountant or the lawyer and saying, look, I need to get this classified as an S Corp. Can you do it in the middle of the year? And they say yes. But then when you go back to say we need to change it, they don't want to change it. Why? Because they want to keep milking cash out of you. If they don't get money out of you, you're not a client anymore. Well, how about you're hiring attorneys? You're hiring accountants in our environment at trusteeship. They have a job to do. And that's called whatever you need them to do. That's legal. They didn't say it was illegal. They just said we shouldn't do it this year. Right. That's the difference between controlled and uncontrolled knowledge as a trustee. That's why people go through our trustee training program. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live. We got a bunch of people listening live, and we'll have a bunch of people listening to this in the replay. We're going to feel free to type into the chat where you're listening from, actually, and we're going to address some questions. These episodes are actually to eliminate consultations for you, so it's like a free consultation, and we'll talk about it in the public estate plan. Obviously, personal situations are always going to be recommended that you go through and get a consultation, but we still want to talk about these things in public because this is a public general conversation. Didn't public school tell you to get a job? Right. Well, we're talking about having a plan for your family estate, for your hard work, labor throughout your life. The estate planners didn't tell you to save in hard assets. They tell you to save in fiat currency, the thing that everybody wants to talk about that isn't real. Oh man, the currency is going to go to zero. The fiat paper is going to go to zero. The United States currency is going to go to zero. It's going to go to zero. But guess what? Gold and silver has never gone to zero. It started out and it's just gone up incrementally. It may have gone down in value at times, but it never went to zero. That's how you preserve your labor. See, in the vault, trustees know that's a true savings. You save energy in gold and silver, let alone your labor, let alone your wealth. We'll address some questions. Individuals are facing the charges for information unknown to themselves while others remain aware of how valuable it is for such possession of someone else's faithless obsession. It's very important to, when people talk about correcting your status, a lot of people come to the vault and they talk about correcting their status, and they say, "Oh, I'm trying to be private." You want to know how you corrected your status? By educating yourself. But what education did you get? Did you get the free information over the internet, or did you invest in your private education? Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing about the American Bankers Association that's public. There's nothing about the Federal Reserve Bank that's public. We're going to drop the jewels on the audience because this is what you get when you come into the private. So some of you all may know this gentleman. His name is Herman Cain. Herman Cain was an African American individual. And by talking to mentors, we learned information. Well, Herman Cain was an African American individual. How is it that he's one of the few African Americans to ever sit on the board of the Federal Reserve and be a shareholder? How? How is this information not in the public? Because the public is okay with not knowing. Oh man, we got to have these anti-discrimination rights. Somebody broke that barrier down already. But how many of you all want to be a part of the Federal Reserve Bank? Most people say, oh, that's an illegal institution. That's not a quality institution. Some people, such as Herman Cain, said, we're not going to be locked outside of the doors. We're going to get behind closed doors. And we're going to have those hard conversations of estate planning. Who do you think's planning out the United States monetary policy right now? It's called the Federal Reserve. They're planning out the estate for the United States financially. But how many people want to send their children to school to get the education to get in those environments? No, Johnny. Go play football. Go be a singer. Go be a dancer. There's nothing wrong with the liberal arts. But what happened to the control mechanisms of real estate? What happened to the control mechanisms of monetary policy? What happened to those control mechanisms of even politics? The politics have controlled people's lives right now. In certain countries, you can go to jail for talking about politicians. In some countries, you can go to jail for putting chewing gum on the side of the road. And you don't think that you need to get your family involved in politics? Maybe it's not you to be the sacrificial lamb, but you won't make sure your child goes into that environment. Right. Because it's a lack of estate planning. It's focused on everybody being selfish. Hey, Johnny, just do whatever you want. Whatever floats on your heart. Ladies and gentlemen, see, when you come to the vault, we could talk to you all about your reason for being. Your purpose in life. There's a way to calculate that. Everybody has a reason for being. Everybody's not good like Trust Christian at speaking. Not everybody's good at that. Not everybody's good at manual labor. Oh no, but I'm going to make sure my kid gets a basketball scholarship so we can get out of this environment. That's what people do. They train their children to put them in a better economic situation. Right. Well, we all have a purpose for being. And the vault makes sure that each of the families know that. You can ask, what is your mathematical calculation? See, the universal language, the vault understands universal language, not just the laws that man's created, the universal laws. That's what the vault really wants to talk to you all about, is the universal laws. The universal language. And that universal language is knowing your purpose and your reason for being. Not everybody has the same purpose. But some people say, hey, I need my child to do this so they can get into a better economic situation. It doesn't work that way. Oh, wow, we got someone listening in from the vault from Greece. It's 3 a.m. tuning in live. That's early in the world, 3 a.m. And we do appreciate you for tuning in live. And this is not just subject to one region of the world. This is a universal language. Estate planning is a universal language. What are you going to plan for the next generation? We already know the will ain't going to get the job done. Because you got somebody trying to steal wealth just because they're the administrator. Well, what about you having the proper education to say if we do go that route, we're going to make sure that we have a contract in place, even with that probate lawyer says you won't even get more than 1%. We got people contacting the vault talking about, I got $100 million estate and I'm going to give Trust Christian and the vault 1%. You're a joke. The vault will never administer their estate for 1%. Why do you think the probate lawyers aren't managing the estate or administering the estate for 1%? They're getting their fair share, 17+%. But oh no, I can't give you 17% of a $100 million contract, Trust Christian. Exactly. So keep it moving because the lawyers are saying the same exact thing. So we're saying educate yourself. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. It's education. We appreciate everybody for tuning in live. You feel free to type into the chat where you're listening from. You can feel free to get a consultation. Christian at Trust Christian. We can talk about the questions you may want to go in and ask these estate attorneys. Go in and ask these estate planners. You have to be able to ask them questions. You're interviewing them. It's not them interviewing you because all they're doing is finding out how deep your pockets are. How deep they can get money out of you. How long they can play with your emotions. And tell you, hey, it just depends. It depends on what? It depends on how deep your pockets are. That's what it depends on. Because why would someone that has money take 17 years for their estate to be administered? Is because of lack of planning on their part. And we see these stories come through every single year. Every single month. Oh, X, Y, and Z is getting ready to get a divorce. So she's going to take half the estate. Or he's going to take half the estate. But what happened to people that put prenuptials in place? People are against prenuptials. Why? Because it's a lack of education. When you have something to lose, you plan. Some people say, oh, well, I got a car. I don't want to lose the car. Then we recommend and talk about going to the public side and dealing with it from the lawyer perspective. Someone typed into the chat, what are the requirements? You can reach out to Christian at trustchristian.com. If you want to get into trustee training, if you want to look into trustee training, this is a private sector education. This is not a public sector education. Things aren't listed on the public side. If you care about your private education, you'll reach out. If you're concerned about your private education, you'll go through the process. There's no freebies though. And if you don't do it, the vault's fine. The vault has an estate plan in place. We know the questions to ask lawyers. We're not against lawyers. We're not against CFPs or CPAs or any of these people. We talk to these people on a daily basis. But nothing's free. Clean air's not free. And neither is your estate plan education going to be free. So if you want to move forward, Christian at trustchristian.com, or guess what? Appreciate you for tuning in live or listening to the replay. Oh man, but this other guy over the internet, he put all the templates on his website. Okay. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to tell you how our mentors told us. Everything has a value. When did free have value? Free doesn't have value. See, this is a conversation that we can have with a complete stranger because that's what you are until you come into the vault. We can have this conversation. But there's going to get to a point where you say, just like our mentors told us, well, you don't really take anything serious until you attach a value to it, Trust Christian. Oh, okay. You want to know what that meant? They were talking about how much were you going to pay for them to sit down with them and talk to them. That's what they were saying. And we knew that. And when we heard that, we said, how much does it cost? Now, sometimes you get some mentors say, oh, I'm going to talk to you and deal with you for free. Some of you all know that. You get friends that say, oh, I'm going to do this business with you and I'm going to do it for free. But then you don't end up getting jack shit done because you didn't pay. You didn't pay to play. Everything has a pay price to action. Everything. But oh man, that's too pricey, Trust Christian. I'm in hard times. I'm at the bottom. Okay. When you gonna move forward past that? It's not about excuses. It's about results. People come to the vault for results. They got tired of the shysters over the internet giving them free information, but they didn't get the training. See, anybody can give you a document. The lawyers can give you a trust. The lawyers can give you a will, but did they train you on that will? No, because they're going to get you for it when you pass. They're just going to sit it in their little file folder. And guess what? They're going to get a tax off of you. Wow. And you're dead. You're going to die, and then they're going to get a tax off of your hard-earned labor, the dollar bills, the gold and silver that you're trying to pass to your children or to your heirs. But then why is it that you hear so many wealthy people say, I'm not going to give the money directly to my children? It's because they understand they're not supposed to do it through a will. And they don't. Why do they have foundations in place? The Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Trump Foundation. Think about how the Trump family is operating. Their whole family is in public office right now. You got the daughter sitting on the presidential cabinet. You got the son sitting on the presidential cabinet. That's called estate planning at its best. You all might want to take notes instead of knocking a family that's successful. That's what success looks like. But oh no, I'm getting into the color of the skin and the personality. Well, the personality actually has a character behind it. And the character says, I care about my children not being ignorant. I don't want to give them money. I'm going to train them into a position. And guess what? The children are right by his side. That's estate planning at its best. You might want to take notes. Go read The Art of the Deal. And get off emotionalism. This is logical. The numbers add up. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Cleveland, appreciate Cleveland. Think that's Cleveland. They probably did a mistypo when they typed into the chat. But appreciate Cleveland for tuning in live. If that's Cleveland, Ohio. But we do these episodes once again, ladies and gentlemen, because people reach out to the consultations and they literally ask these questions. They're still asking questions about wills, and they're like, well, I'm in trust. And it's like, well, why are you asking about a will? I thought you felt like you were in a superior position. Go do your research on which one is a superior position. Which one's being talked about, which one's not. Why are there 80 different types of trust, but then there's just this one simple will document? Or what's the template for it? Why do all these wealthy people have foundations when they die? Okay. Right. And you don't work next to a Rothschilds. You don't work next to a Rockefeller. You don't work next to a Kennedy. Right. Because they had an estate plan in place. And what's interesting is here, how many people will listen to episodes like this and they know that they have assets in their name and they're not in a mad rush to put it in the proper position. That's not their focus. Their focus is to grow the estate. Once again, there's a system in place at the vault. You first protect it, not grow it. You second preserve it, not grow it. Third is growth. Then you can pass it along properly, even if you went tomorrow. Protect, preserve, grow, and pass it along properly. That's a system of wealth passing. It's not a book that you can go get from these guys, Dave Ramsey and all the rest of these guys. Susie Orman. They tell you to save your wealth to wealth. Really? Reduce your expenses. Then you get a lot of successful people say, well, focus on cash flow. Don't focus on getting more money. Focus on getting cash flow, passive income producing assets in place. Wow, so I shouldn't be focused on working hard. I shouldn't be focused on getting money. I should be focused on ideas that pay passively in the proper position, at least positioning properly first. That's kind of the idea. That is the idea. It's a system of wealth building, ladies and gentlemen. Trustee Training, make sure that that is in place with the manual. Make sure it's in place with the mentorship to the successors. You might have to create that first generation manual for yourself. Are you willing to do that? See, estate planning requires you to be the sacrificial lamb, not to wait for one to come save you. Oh, so many people think my children are going to be my slaves. My children are going to be my meal ticket. They're going to do all the work for me when I'm in my older age. Well, let's go look at other countries right now, such as China, where they have birth restrictions. There's a gap right now. Because they have birth restrictions, they don't have a middle class. People to take care of the baby boomers. They don't have pensions in their country. United States used to have pensions. Now the younger people in the United States don't have pensions. So who do you think is going to take care of your parents in the elder years? Not the pension from the companies, not Social Security. How many younger people don't believe in Social Security, but you're still paying into a defunct program? They even got government and news articles that come out and says, well, the fund is going to run out by this period of time. But what happened? Your ignorance is allowing you to contribute to a fund you know is not even going to be around. It's called ignorance. It's called willful ignorance, ladies and gentlemen. We already know those people aren't listening to the vault. Because they say ignorance is bliss. That's what they believe. Ignorance is bliss for idiots. The ones that are educated, they're writing laws for you throwing bubble gum on the ground. They're the ones writing laws saying you have birth restrictions. That's the environment we're living in. We're living in the educated environment. Intelligence, information. Are you going to pay the cost to be the boss? Or are you going to eat dirt to pay dirt? Appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Feel free to listen into the vault. Go back to the past episodes. Christian that Trust Christian. If you're looking for a consultation, appreciate you all.